What if the most expensive cyber attack in history didn't steal your money, but simply erased your ability to function? What if a single phone call could hijack a global megaphone and convince millions to trust a lie? And what if a quiet software bug opened a vault with the identity keys to a nation? Tonight, we're pulling 3 case files from the Drawer 1 worm that looked like ransom but behaved like a wrecking ball, 1 social engineering blitz that slipped past the gate by sounding helpful, and 1 data breach so vast it became a cautionary tale. These are not puzzles for specialists. They are stories about the rules we forget and the bill that always comes due. Our first case begins with something mundane: an update. In late June of 2017, Ukrainian businesses woke up to a routine prompt from a widely used accounting program. Updates are supposed to bring fixes. This one ushered in chaos. The attackers had quietly seeded the supplier's software distribution system with a poison package. When customers installed it, they weren't just up to date, they were compromised. That's the initial foothold supply chain style. You're not tricked into opening a sketchy email or plugging in a random drive. You willingly accept an upgrade from a tool you trust. The update becomes a Trojan horse rolled in through the front gate. Inside those systems, the malware sprang to life. It didn't need elaborate magic. It started where so many attackers do, with the keys that people already have. Computers keep credentials in memory like quick dial numbers for speed and convenience. The malware grabbed those, then moved, room to room, across networks, abusing normal tools that administrators use daily and exploiting known holes in Windows that hadn't been patched everywhere. That's the escalation. No ninja tricks, more like a very fast burglar who knows which doors swing in and which windows were left open because the house is busy. And then came the payload. The program posed like ransomware, flashing a stern note demanding Bitcoin to decrypt your files. But this wasn't a ransom, it was a disguise. Under the hood, the malware sabotaged the very map of the hard drive critical structures that tell a computer where everything is. It wasn't locking the door, it was bulldozing the house and then taping a bill to the rubble. Even if you paid, there was no real way back. In the hours that followed, not just Ukraine but the rest of the world stumbled. The worm jumped from one neighbor to another inside multinational networks. Container vessels stood idle because servers that coordinated shipping routes wouldn't boot, pharmaceutical plants halted production, logistics companies lost tracking invoices and systems midstream. One global shipper rebuilt tens of thousands of machines in days, racing against the tide. Another found salvation in an unlikely place: a single domain controller in a power-challenged office that happened to be offline when the blast hit. A lonely survivor used as a template to resurrect the rest. The damage was counted not in stolen data but in days lost, contracts missed, and billions of dollars of business interrupted. The timeline is important: initial foothold through a trusted software update. Rapid escalation by stealing credentials and writing known vulnerabilities that organizations hadn't fully patched. Payload disguised as ransom while acting as a wiper, dismantling the file system. Impact measured in operational paralysis, not payouts. Why did it work? Because trust is a shortcut we all take. Because patching is never as fast as attackers are curious. Because a note demanding crypto is dramatic, but the real danger, often the quiet code you don't see that just erases your options. If you're wondering what could have stopped it, the answer isn't a silver bullet. Its layers limit how far administrative privileges can travel. Segment networks so a fire in one building doesn't consume the whole block. Treat updates like cargo arriving at a port, verified by signature, yes, but also inspected for behavior. Keep backups offline, truly offline, and rehearse bringing the lights back on, not just for files, but for entire systems. And above all, recognize that the calm voice of the trusted vendor is not a shield. Trust must be earned continuously. Our second case sounds less cinematic at first. No glowing skulls, no smoking servers, just a phone ringing. It's 2020, the world is working from home. Employees are juggling VPNs, multi-factor prompts, and hastily stretched help desks. Attackers understand that when you change a routine, people lean on guidance, so they called. The voice on the other end claimed to be IT support. Friendly, efficient, and slightly urgent. There's an issue with your login. We'll get you back online. Can you just confirm a code? Can you log in here so we can verify? It's called phishing voice phishing, and it works because people want to be helpful and avoid trouble. The initial foothold was a conversation, not a code exploit. One employee gave up a credential. Another confirmed a multi-factor prompt they didn't recognize under the pressure of a "we're fixing it right now" script. With those pieces, the attackers stepped through the VPN door into internal systems not as a stranger, but as someone who belonged. And inside, they reached for one of the most sensitive tools any platform possesses, an admin interface that lets staff reset emails, change recovery settings, and take control of accounts. The escalation here was social, then procedural. Trick a human, then leverage legitimate access that grants extraordinary power. The payload was a message. High-profile accounts from technology founders to politicians to celebrities suddenly posted a breathless offer. Send Bitcoin to this wallet and your money will be doubled. The posts were identical and, for a while, unstoppable. Account after account was commandeered, retweeted, amplified by the aura of authority that blue-check names carry. People sent money. The total stolen was comparatively small, under $200,000. But the impact was not counted in coins. It was a blow to trust. If this megaphone can be hijacked that easily, what happens when the message isn't a clumsy get-rich-quick scam, but something timed to move markets, to sow panic, to manipulate a vote? The platform scrambled to lock down, temporarily freezing many verified accounts. The wider internet watched and shivered. The timeline again is simple. Initial foothold through social engineering by phone. Escalation to internal tools via compromised employee access. Payload in the form of hijacked posts. Impact measured as reputational damage. Policy overhaul. And a public demonstration that the soft layer, the human layer, is the easiest to bend. Why did it work? Because many organizations treat the internal line as inherently safe. Because rushed remote work turned support into a fire brigade, and attackers mimic the siren. Because multi-factor works, but some factors are easier to trick than others when a voice is cajoling you on a stressful day. Halfway through this autopsy, a quick ask: if you want more of these cyber case files told plainly and without hype, subscribe and stay with me because the next twist is worse. Our third case is quieter, no sudden blackout, no flashing scam tweets. Just a web application humming along with a known flaw that should have been patched. The vulnerability had been disclosed, a fix released, and most operators started the long, messy process of updating. But patching at scale is like renovating a house while people still live in it. Things get delayed, alerts get missed. Somewhere on a public-facing system, the door stayed unlocked. Attackers tested it, slipped in, and planted a foothold. No fireworks, just a silent agreement. You keep serving the public. We'll browse the back room. From that beachhead, they moved deeper, exploring what that application could see and what the connected network would allow. Think of it like wandering through a building where the front desk has access to the filing cabinets and none of the interior doors are locked. The attackers didn't need to smash anything. They read, learned, took their time, and began exfiltrating data, names, addresses, birth dates. In some cases, driver's license numbers and the crown jewels, social security numbers for the majority of the affected population. The attack lasted weeks to months, long enough for the operators to build a quiet pipeline and for defenders to miss the early signs. There were clues: an expired certificate on a monitoring system that should have been watching, alerts that slipped through cracks, but the point isn't to gloat. It's to understand what soft failure looks like. Not negligence, but complexity. Not carelessness, but drift. The payload was data theft at national scale. The impact was both immediate and enduring. Headlines blazed with the number over 100 million people affected, lawsuits, hearings, apologies. The company embarked on a remediation program that cost in the hundreds of millions, then settled claims for more than that still. Consumers froze credit files, days of productivity were spent filling out forms. And the true cost, it's ongoing. Data like birth dates and social security numbers don't expire, they're not passwords you can reset. They sit in underground markets, bundled and resold, used for identity theft years after everyone else has moved on. The timeline holds steady, initial foothold through an unpatched, public-facing vulnerability. Escalation into connected systems without strict segmentation and consistent monitoring. Payload as mass data exfiltration. Impact as long-term identity exposure and financial consequence. Why did it work? Because asset inventories are rarely perfect. Because patching is a race between the known and the practical. Because alerting is noisy, and humans triage noise until silence feels like relief. And because once sensitive data is copied, the battle turns from prevention to mitigation, and mitigation is never satisfying. Three very different scenes. One repeating playbook, trust is the lever. In the first case, trust in a vendor update. In the second, trust in a friendly voice from IT. In the third, the implicit trust we place in exposed applications to behave and to be maintained. Privilege is the amplifier. In the first, admin tools and outdated systems let the worm sprint. In the second, internal admin panels became the ringmaster of the chaos. In the third, broad access and weak segmentation turned a web bug into a database tour. And visibility is the rescue you only miss when it's gone. Behavior monitoring that could have flagged a malicious update acting like a worm. Verification processes that tell a pressured employee to hang up and call back a known number. Certificates and scans that actually see the outside edges of your digital property and report honestly back to you. Let's make this practical. Imagine updating your home's security. You could buy a taller fence, but if you leave the contractor's gate code under the mat, someone will use it. So you do three simple things. First, you make sure the person at the door is who they say they are. For a company, that means phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, physical keys, or app-based prompts tied to the device, not just a code whispered over the phone. For a person, it means never sharing codes on a call you didn't initiate and calling back on a number you can verify when something feels off. Second, you don't let one key open every room. That's segmentation and least privilege. Your streaming stick doesn't need to talk to your work laptop. Your web app doesn't need to see the database unless a request passes strict checks. Inside a company, that looks like separating networks, limiting admin tokens, and watching for unusual movement. Third, you plan for failure that doesn't end the world. Backups that are offline, tested, and capable of rebuilding not just files, but entire services. Recovery drills that make the muscle memory of the worst day a practice routine. And whenever possible, you reduce the blast radius by making the most sensitive data hard to misuse even if it's stolen through masking, tokenization, and careful key management. There's another lesson hidden in the noise. Many of the scariest attacks aren't trying to be clever, they're trying to be fast. The NotPetya-style wiper didn't need to invent new tricks because organizations tend to be a patchwork of ages and exceptions. The Twitter breach didn't need a zero day because remote work created a perfect storm of urgency and confusion. The data leak didn't need a nation-state budget because public vulnerabilities are doorways for anyone with patience. In an environment like that, the winning move isn't to chase every new celebrity threat. It's to shorten the distance between we know and we act. When a patch drops, crown jewel systems get first priority. When your workforce goes remote, your authentication gets a backbone. When your monitoring goes blind, you fix the eyes before you remodel the house. And yes, none of this is free, but neither is downtime. One global shipper rebuilt entire fleets of machines in an impossible sprint because they had no other choice. That's heroic, not sustainable. One social network ate a week of headlines and a year of policy rework because the phone rang and too many assumptions answered. One credit bureau spent the better part of a decade paying out, rebuilding trust, and living with the knowledge that the breach would echo far beyond any settlement. Somewhere between perfect and negligent is realistic. It's labeled with checklists that fit on one page and habits that survive the next reorg. So the next time an update appears and you're tempted to click without thinking, ask yourself who vouches for this package beyond a digital signature. The next time a support call pressures you to speed through a login, add friction on purpose, hang up, breathe, call back on a number you know. The next time a tidy dashboard says everything is green, verify the basics. Are the certificates fresh? The scans up to date? The inventory honest about the machines you actually expose to the internet? We imagine cyber threats as strangers in black hoodies. Often they are just the consequences of our own shortcuts wearing a borrowed face. The fix isn't paranoia, it's precision. Know your crown jewels. Know your doors and windows. Know who has the keys and how to change the locks without tearing down the house. At the beginning, I promised 3 case files and 1 spine that runs through them all. It sounds almost disappointingly straightforward: people, process, and patching. Not glamorous, not headline grabbing, but relentlessly effective. Teach your people to verify and refuse pressure. Design your process so that a single credential can't rewrite reality. Patch what faces the world as if your reputation depends on it, because it does. Combine those with rehearsed recovery and the humility to expect failure, and you turn tragedies into incidents. The internet won't get kinder, but you can make your corner of it harder to burn, harder to full, and much, much harder to empty. And if you ever need a reminder, remember the worm that looked like ransom but left only ruins, the phone call that borrowed authority and sold a lie, and the quiet bug that opened a vault. 3 different tricks, 1 lesson: trust is a tool. Use it carefully or someone else will use it against you.